The main aim of this podcast is to tell the story of my object of desire, a small, brown, unassuming jade carving, currently on display in Durham's Oriental Museum. My own research has placed the object within the Song dynasty of China between 960 and 1279 AD. Contemporary receptions of the object rely heavily on its integration into the Chinese cultural, religious and artistic traditions of this era. In Chinese tradition, small jade or hard stone animals are common. The practice was conceived due to small pieces of jade either being easier to acquire or from offcuts from larger pieces. Due to the stone's monetary worth, artists were reluctant to discard the excess. Medieval China was a highly stratified and patrilineal society, in line with its Neo-Confucian values. The stone's value suggests that this lion was initially intended for a male child within the upper echelons of society. The lion's assumed use was as a talisman to provide personal protection. Childhood in medieval China was fraught with difficulty. Estimations put infant mortality rates at around 50% during this era. Ailments were often attributed to evil spirits. Children were at higher risk due to the belief that they were unformed. This included both physical and spiritual development. Their qi, or inner yin and yang, was still stabilizing and were therefore vulnerable to disease or death. Lions are not native to China, which partly explains their stylized appearance. However, they have always had close ties to religion, Buddhism in particular. Stone lions or guard lions are usually positioned outside temples, buildings and homes to protect these places from evil spirits. There is also a linguistic association between the lion and stone. The Chinese word for both lion and stone is shi. The only difference is the phonetic stress on the pronunciation of each word, shi-si. Everything in the material world is a manifestation of Tao. The world is not comprised of independent entities, but sets of surfaces, each of which are in a constant process of transformation. Therefore, the transient quality of the lion's life is part of what it symbolizes in the very surface of the stone. The oscillation between these two energy forces are exemplified within the representation of the animals. One guard lion is female, yin, and the other male, yang. The male usually has his mouth open whilst the female's is shut. They mirror each other's movements, a dynamic of complementary, not opposing forces, interacting to form a whole greater than the separate parts. Symbolically, the female lion protects the living souls within, while the male guards the external material elements. The closed mouth of my lion, and its association with human protection, may mean that this carving is a female. This also raises the question as to whether it was originally part of a pair. This lion was made to be carried, touched, played with and traced with fingers. Its smooth, polished surface, size, textures and curved contours are made for human hands. I can imagine having it in my pocket, its slight weight always giving it a presence within the lightness of clothing. Its size is made to fit in a palm, and the curve of its spine, along with the ridges, follow the parabolic curve of a person's thumb in motion. It is a highly sensory object. The lion's current place in the museum makes me wonder about its original owner. Did the lion fail to protect the child it was gifted to, and was it subsequently discarded by grieving parents? The premise that tragedy could have been a part of this lion's story is sobering, and it surrounds the object with a further layer of mystery. Rolling on the years to 1949, and China is in a state of civil war between its two main parties, the People's Republic and the Communist Party. This tension incorporated two of the world's largest superpowers at the time, America and Russia. Britain had also not been left unscathed. A British Navy ship, the HMS Amethyst, had been severely damaged by communist forces in China. Its triumphant return into Britain in November 1949 was still fresh in the mind of Sir Charles Hardinger, who had read about it in his morning newspaper only a month earlier. As a collector, Charles took advantage of this new accessibility to the east through Allied forces. The Roaring Forties Great Circle route had linked Britain, China, Australia and the USA in a complex economic chain. This had significantly increased the amount of new Chinese exports now flooding into Britain. It was Monday the 5th of December 1949, and a new chapter in the story of the lion, which had since travelled 5,000 miles, possibly as part of a haul from an opportunist Allied soldier, perhaps even from the HMS Amethyst. This would explain the rise of objects Sir Charles bought that month. This day alone he spent nearly £100 on several jade carvings, around £3,600 in today's money, no small amount during the post-war period of austerity. After receiving an injury during active service in World War I, Charles was meant to exercise regularly by taking long walks. Instead, he would escape into nearby antique shops where he would sit for hours a day drinking cups of tea with the owners and discussing their collections. What had begun in 1917 as a small act of defiance against being made to exercise ignited his interest in collecting Asian artifacts. Years later, at 71 years of age, these visits became a regular part of his routine. He meticulously kept a logbook of all his acquisitions, a record of his love affair with objects, and his own secret history of touch. In this he recorded the purchase of the lion. The lion was now a part of this love affair and remained in his care for around 10 years. Possibly displayed in a vitrine, it became part of the performance of Western collections, made for digressive conversation and for distraction. The connection to everyday life, albeit exotic, provided escapism. Unlike museum glass cases, vitrines can be opened. Objects which were designed to be touched make collections such as these highly sensual. In 1959, due to ill health, Sir Charles donated the lion along with thousands of other pieces from his collection to the newly built Oriental Museum. Sometime between then and now, the lion was unwrapped by a member of the museum staff. The final part of the lion's story thus began. It resides in an area of quiet contemplation, which complements its Taoist and Buddhist origins. Whilst the museum's vitrines cannot be opened, it is framed as an object which was made to be touched. They achieve this by tantalizing the viewer, suspending the object on a glass shelf in a locked cabinet. The self-contained world in which it now belongs is full of other unprincely objects, and its contribution is to add a little wit into this Wunderkammer. It is no longer seen as a powerful talisman for protection, nor is it owned for the purpose of individual pleasure. Its changed status as an antique, something which must be protected, is also a new part of its journey. It has a different kind of worth now. What makes this object so special is its longevity, journey, and the story it has to tell. Part of that story is its time in Durham, the people it comes into contact with every day at the museum, and for some, like me, it becomes part of their story too. Objects may now have a different meaning. I look at things in a new way. On my first visit to the museum, I bought myself a little Buddha from the gift shop for good luck with my project. It's an object with spiritual power and meaning for me, not unlike the lion had for its first owner. Mine and the Buddha's story began on the same day I met the lion, and as I turn this Buddha in my hands, I realise that its story is just beginning.